The team over at Rocket Lab are gearing up for their busiest year yet. There are somewhere between 19 and 23 Electron missions in Rocket Lab's backlog that are expected to launch within 2025. These include 5 launches with Black Sky, 2 with Synspective, 2 with Kinéis, Ada Space's LOXSAT-1, and many more. And of course, we'd be remiss not to discuss the sleeping giant that is the suborbital variant of Electron known as the Hypersonic Accelerator Suborbital Test Electron, or HASTE for short. On January 6th, American defense contractor Kratos Defense and Security Solutions announced that they have been awarded an Other Transaction Authority contract for the Multi-Service Advanced Capability Hypersonic Testbed, aka MACH-TB 2.0. This award sees a total value of up to $1.45 billion over a 5-year period. Within the press release, Kratos highlights key teammates including Leidos, Rocket Lab, Stratolaunch, and others. So before we continue, let's double-click on the original MACH-TB program, which is currently underway. MACH-TB is a U.S. Department of Defense initiative aimed at accelerating the development and testing of hypersonic technologies. By leveraging commercially available launch systems, MACH-TB provides an affordable and responsive testbed for hypersonic flight, bridging the gap between ground tests and full-scale system demonstrations. The current MACH-TB program, which we'll refer to as 1.0, is expected to have a total of somewhere between 25 to 40 launches. These launches come in many forms, including missile and suborbital platforms, air-launched systems, high-altitude balloons, or even ISS deployment or hosted payloads. Now, given the nature of the video, we're going to zoom into the original MACH-TB 1.0 program, and more specifically, how it's impacted Rocket Lab. So on June 18th, 2023, MACH-TB achieved a significant milestone with the successful launch of its first suborbital testbed vehicle, launched by none other than Rocket Lab's HASTE. This inaugural flight, conducted by Leidos' Dynetics team, demonstrated the capability to rapidly prototype and test hypersonic technologies. On November 24, 2024, Rocket Lab launched their second HASTE vehicle, which was also under MACH-TB 1.0. This project was awarded by Naval Service Warfare Center, aka NSWC, Crane, through the Strategic and Spectrum Missions Advanced Resilient Trusted Systems, aka SMART, Other Transaction Authority vehicle on behalf of the U.S. Department of Defense Test Resource Management Center, aka TRMC. Rocket Lab's third HASTE took place on December 14, 2024, and you guessed it, was also under MACH-TB 1.0. While the customer for the second and third HASTE launched are confidential, we can deduce that Rocket Lab still has 3 or more MACH-TB launches remaining within their current manifest, bringing us to 6 or more in total. So of the 25 to 40 launches that are under the MACH-TB 1.0 program, Rocket Lab is responsible for roughly 20%. Circling back to the press release from Kratos, one final point we'll touch on is the mention of a need to affordably increase hypersonic flight test cadence. So what this tells me is that we can expect an increased cadence between MACH-TB 2.0 from 1.0. Or in other words, an increase of the 6 launches that were awarded to Rocket Lab from 1.0. And not only are they doing the launch for the MACH-TB program, but a whole lot more. Following the success of Rocket Lab's second HASTE launch, there was a mention that not only did Rocket Lab successfully complete the launch, but they also designed, manufactured, assembled, and integrated the experimental instrument for the test on a highly accelerated timeline. So as if this Kratos news wasn't good enough, here's a reminder that this is just one program. On August 9th, 2023, Kratos announced an exclusive teaming agreement to procure up to 20 DART-AE systems from Hypersonix. Now, if DART-AE sounds familiar, it's because Rocket Lab are on the brink of launching Hypersonix's first DART-AE system, with many more on the horizon, assuming all goes well. DART-AE is a 3-meter-long, single-use hypersonic vehicle powered by a hydrogen-fueled Spartan scramjet engine, enabling speeds of up to Mach 7 and a range of 1,000 kilometers. The vehicle features a fully 3D printed airframe made from high-temperature alloys and are primarily designed for testing and evaluating hypersonic technologies. Each DART AE vehicle typically undergoes testing by being launched on a small rocket. This allows Hypersonix to test the scramjet engine in real hypersonic flight conditions. Using small launch vehicles, such as Rocket Lab's HASTE, is a common approach for these kinds of tests. This offers a cost-effective and flexible method to reach the altitudes and speeds necessary for hypersonic testing. In a typical program, 6 to 12 flight tests might be conducted before declaring the system operational. This number could increase if unforeseen challenges arise, such as issues with the scramjet ignition or performance, thermal protection degradation, or unexpected aerodynamic instabilities. Given its innovative hydrogen-powered scramjet engine, DART AE is likely to require more rigorous testing than a conventional hypersonic system, especially to meet environmental and operational standards. So to close this section out, Neutron's arrival to market is often deemed as the electron killer. But as you can see from what we've just gone over, this seems to be far from the case. So between Neutron's arrival to market and Electron's ever-increasing cadence, it seems to me like Rocket Lab is going to need another launch pad or two in the not-so-distant future, although this seems to be something that's already in the works. Now, since we brought it up, let's talk about the Neutron. On January 9th, 2025, Rocket Lab announced that Neutron has been included to provide launch services for NASA through their existing Venture Class Acquisition of Dedicated and Rideshare, aka VADR, contract. This contract was originally announced 3 years ago and has landed Rocket Lab 2 sets of back-to-back Electron launches. The first set, known as Tropics, launching in May of 2023, and the second set, known as Pre-Fire, launching in May and June of 2024. So on top of these launches, we also have some insight into a few other contracts that are under this VADR program. We have a $20 million task order that was awarded to Blue Origin for the launch of the Escapade Mars mission. NOAA's Quick Sounder mission was awarded to Firefly Aerospace for an undisclosed amount in September of 2024, as well as several CubeSat missions that have been assigned to providers such as SpaceX, SEOPS, and Phantom Space. Combining these publicly known contracts, then comparing them against VADR's maximum total budget of $300 million, leaves us somewhere around $150 to $200 million remaining in the budget. This would translate to 3 to 4 Neutron launches, assuming Rocket Lab is awarded the net remaining value, which is unlikely given that there are a dozen other companies that are also being awarded contracts under the VADR program. Moving on to reaction wheels, back in August of 2024, Rocket Lab updated the datasheet for the 12 Newton-meter-seconds wheel. For those unfamiliar, this 12 NMS wheel was announced in September of 2021 alongside its production line being built in New Zealand, touting an annual capacity of 2,000 units per year. This production line was built over a period of roughly 18 months and was later announced to be primarily for one customer who consumed the line's full capacity of 2,000 wheels in 2024 alone. So despite the enormity of this contract, this customer is still largely unknown. Circling back to the datasheet update, there is a mention that there are 8 proto-flight model units with identical mechanicals to flight models in orbit since October of 2023. So in simple terms, 8 of these units, these reaction wheels, were yeeted into orbit across what we can assume to be 2 satellites. Now, this is probably not a big deal though, because as everyone knows, nothing noteworthy happened in October of 2023. So let's move over to the ongoing drama between Rocket Lab and Varda Space. On December 10th, I joined Space Investor on an X Spaces with Varda co-founder Delian Asparov. During the call, Delian shed some light in terms of what we can expect from the future of their satellite architecture once their second and third Rocket Lab built spacecraft have been deployed. Let's take a listen.
Publicly, we have only confirmed that W2 and W3 will be launched with the Rocket Lab bus. I think, sort of beyond that, we're, sort of not yet, sort of commenting on what our architecture will be, but obviously after the close of the W3 mission, we'll obviously sort of be talking about what sort of future architectures may look like.
So, despite being announced in May of 2022, this fourth craft seems to no longer be happening. Or maybe so. On December 17th, Rocket Lab announced the delivery of Varda's second spacecraft, along the completion of the production and testing of the third craft. Within this announcement, there was a clear mention that the fourth craft is currently being built at Rocket Lab's Spacecraft Production Complex in Long Beach, California. But it doesn't end there. Fast forward to December 22nd, in an FCC filing, Varda mentions that their fourth craft to be launched will be designed and manufactured in-house by Varda themselves under the branding of VW Series. This fourth launch is scheduled for June 2025, which aligns with SpaceX's Transporter 14 mission. This FCC filing has no mention of who the planned operator is set to be, though we can assume that if Varda are planning to bring the SAT buses in-house, they're probably at least considering doing the same for operations. So what we're left assuming is that this fourth Rocket Lab built craft will either be launching in the second half of 2025 or later, or that it is being kept as a ground unit, a sort of reference point for Varda to return to and to study. So while the future of Rocket Lab and Varda wasn't guaranteed past these first four craft, it's a little unfortunate that the relationship seems to be discontinued prior to what could have been something like 20 to 30 craft being built over the next several years, assuming all goes well for Varda, which I have no doubt it will. So thankfully, Rocket Lab doesn't rely solely on this one customer alone. And to highlight this, let's get into some numbers. So the valuation model you see here, this is available to view and download via the Patreon link in the description below. Also available are Redwire, Planet Labs, Shift4, with one or two more that are currently in progress. Now, generally these models are built out to look 1 year ahead in advance, but in the case of Rocket Lab, we have a greater level of visibility and therefore go all the way out to 2030. This covers everything from backlog to recovery to valuation metrics, you name it. So whether you're here for the upcoming Q4 and full year 2024 print, or are seeing this video at a later date, these models are in a perpetual state of being updated, so if by the time you see this video, this next section might be outdated, but the models will not be. So, at a glance, Rocket Lab's Q4 guide covers revenue, gross margins, operating expenses, interest expense, adjusted EBITDA, and basic weighted average shares outstanding. Starting with revenue, Rocket Lab generally guides for both launch services and space systems individually. However, starting with this Q4 guide, they simply put the two together. During the quarter, we saw a total of 5 launches, comprised of 1 with Kinéis, 1 with Synspective, and 3 confidential launches, 2 of which were HASTE. Rocket Lab's HASTE launches have a slightly higher ASP compared to the standard Electron launches, while launches within a bulk order, such as Kinéis and Synspective, are typically sold at a slight discount. The outstanding confidential launch is a bit of an unknown, but all in all, it's safe to assume an average launch price within the quarter of $8.4 million, bringing us to Q4 launch revenue of $42 million. While Space Systems doesn't have quite as much visibility, a slight appreciation over Q3 lands us at $88 million, arriving us to Q4's mid-range guidance of $130 million. Moving down to gross margins, the 2 HASTE launches not only have higher revenue, but higher launch costs attached as well. Each launch out of Wallops sees an increase of roughly $1 million. For Q3 margins, we can expect something in the range of 34% for launch, 28% for space systems, and 30% overall, landing us just outside the high end of guidance. For operating expenses, Rocket Lab is guiding for $84 to $86 million, marking a slight increase to both R&D and SG&A. To expedite the remainder of what to expect, We're going to be using $1 million for interest expense compared to Rocket Lab's $1.5, resulting in an adjusted EBITDA of negative $22 million versus Rocket Lab's $27 to $29 million. The reason these numbers are more optimistic than what's guided for is because Rocket Lab has a propensity to meet, if not exceed, their quarterly guidance. For Q4 net income, expect negative $45 million or negative 9 cents in EPS based on quarter-end share count of 504 million rather than the average share count that's being guided for. Share count change is expected to have seen an increase of 0.92% quarter over quarter and 2.36% year over year. The final KPI that we're going to touch on is backlog. As of Q3 end, Rocket Lab had $1,048 million in backlog. To find Q4 end backlog, we take this Q3 backlog, subtract Q4 revenue, then add back any contracts that were added throughout Q4. On November 12th, Rocket Lab announced a 2-launch Neutron contract with a confidential Constellation operator. Each of these launches would add somewhere between $50 to $55 million each to launch backlog. We're going to go a little bit on the low end, assuming there is a bit of a discount for a bulk order, with $100 million for the 2 launches. So putting these numbers together gives us a Q4 end minimum backlog of $1,018 million. Now, aside from this Neutron contract, Rocket Lab have been unusually quiet in terms of new Electron contracts, new space system contracts, who the reaction wheel customer is, why it's Amazon, and much more. Now, what this tells me is that Rocket Lab is set to have a fair bit of show and tell over the next several months. So while we have an idea of a few new potential contracts, it's a bit of a shot in the dark trying to assume how they might impact backlog, and as a result, this becomes one of the metrics that I'm most interested in as we head towards the Q4 print. So I'll pass it to you guys. What kind of backlog increase are you expecting in Q4? What are you hoping to see from earnings? What are you hoping to see throughout the entire year? Leave a comment below, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to check out the Patreon, whether it's for the valuation models or simply to support the channel. Thank you guys for the hangout. I'll see you in the next one. Have an awesome day. Peace.